Let's get going. We got the battle styles pack. Woo! All right, let's open this boy.
Have a sleeping tyrannosaur.
There we go. All right, we got it. All right, I got it open. Okay, zoop. Card trick. 2, 3, 4. He could be Portugal. What? Wait, that's crazy. Okay. So, we got fire, roly boly, energy, blip bug, pugly, haunch. Oh, there's something? It was pretty heavy, not gonna lie. Level ball, Dottler, Mawile, reverse, and bro, what is this? Ew, wait. Ew, wait. Oh, it's anime. Ah! Yo, I know. Hey, no, look at hey, look at this though. This one's kind of fire. Oh, look at this, bro. Hey, look at this one. Okay. All right. I gotta send these in for grading now. Hold up. Okay, so I'm back in the Poke Studio with these 3 pristine condition cards. Like, just upon first glance, I think they're all a PSA 10. But to truly grade these cards accurately, I'm going to have to take a really good look at every substance of these cards. That being the centering, the design, and wear and tear. Now, seeing these cards are not full arts or secret rares like Gintama or JoJo's Part 7 card, I would be a little more lenient in my grading of these cards in particular. Okay, you know, I've had enough. We're talking about freaking anime, not Pokemon cards. I can't keep this act up forever because some people are slower at processing this information than others. That being said, I'm still going to be using the PSA format to grade these shows so I can be quirky. So getting back to the actual shows, I'm going to be talking about Konosuba, Kaguya-sama Love is War, and Akame ga Kill. I genuinely enjoyed each one of these shows in their own ways. Yeah, most of them have something great to deliver when it comes to anime and the like, in their own respective ways, of course. Kaguya-sama has some of the best comedy out there when it comes to anime, and yet still manages to tell a really heartwarming story. Konosuba is also home to some great comedics, and also manages to be the only isekai I'll probably truly care about. And Akame ga Kill is something we will talk about. Now, I realize that comboing 2 comedy shows with the serious one is a little weird, but just hear me out. I'm not just gonna watch some filler anime that I have no desire to watch just because it fits the theme of the video. Most of the other anime are probably all bandwagoned by all those unironic body pillow people with their unique bed sheets. To avoid possible hypocrisy in the future, I'm going to use the word unironic when describing these people, just in case. The format of this video is a little different from what I usually do for comprehensive reviews, but I find it to be more efficient for my own time and effort just to bundle a bunch of shorter length anime together. Anyway, this intro's dragged on longer than a setup combo with Testament. So, without further ado, let's get into the PSA grading process for Konosuba, Kaguya-sama Love is War, and Akame ga Kill. Most people, including Grandma Josephine, are all too familiar with the genre of anime by the name of isekai, which mostly originate from the light novels with stupid freaking names. Like, their names are way too long. Like, imagine trying to talk to someone about an anime and they say, "Oh yeah, have you watched the latest episode of that time I was coincidentally in your mom's room and it was like another worldly experience?" It's whack, man. Anyway, we're not here to talk about your mom. I feel like most people know enough. We're here to talk about a show that uses this aforementioned long name formula, but luckily can be shortened into something way easier to say. I'm of course talking about Konosuba. This show, unlike some of the other shows I've covered on this channel, is pretty much exactly what I was expecting. Now, it's not a bad thing though, don't worry. It's a funny show with some baddies in it. That's all that really needs to be said, but of course, I will go into more depth. As mentioned before, this is an isekai, so it takes place in a parallel world that is very similar to that of a video game world. There are classes and a big bad Devil King that need to be vanquished by a party of only the strongest individuals. This setting is honestly really cool in my opinion. I really like how the different people in the town level up by touching a piece of paper with a bunch of stats on it. I also like that there's a semi-realistic feel to the world despite all the fantasy elements. Like how once Kazuma's party defeated the Holland, he was forced to pay property damage, which his reward for the kill didn't even fully cover. Honestly, the world itself is one of the best sources of humor that this show has to offer. It subverts the expectations of both the viewer and Kazuma, who would usually think that in a Final Fantasy MMO style world, they would just be set right from the beginning of their journey, and have a pretty linear journey when it comes to stopping the Devil King, which I honestly think sets up a more inspirational story of going from the ground up to achieve their goal of defeating the Devil King. I would give the centering for Konosuba an 8 out of 10. Konosuba sports a great cast of main characters who are extremely flawed. Kazuma's a no BS person who will do almost everything to come out victorious in any situation, no matter how underhanded his methods are. Also, he's kind of a creep, not gonna lie. Aqua's an alcoholic former goddess with a goddess complex. You would think her being a former goddess, she would be an invaluable asset to the team, right? Wrong-o. She's almost completely useless. Sometimes she does some cool stuff like in that one episode. But yeah. Megumin is a arch wizard who is the definition of a glass cannon. She can cast a powerful explosion spell, but only once a day. And once she uses the spell, she's rendered almost completely useless. Notice the theme yet? Darkness is like Saratobi from Gintama, turned up to 11. She's a complete masochist who essentially just acts as the party's meat shield and enjoys doing so. She has literally said she wants to be captured by the Devil King's army and get defiled by them. Besides that, she's a crusader who can't land a single hit on her foes. So once again, despite all their flaws, they blend together really well as a party, and all have some great moments that in some ways redeem their lesser qualities. They are all in all what makes the show as funny as it is, as some of the interactions that they have with reoccurring characters, and even just the interactions that they have with themselves, all serve to show that they're being 100% themselves. And in the end, that's what true friendship is. That was perhaps one of the corniest things I've said on this channel. I will proceed to report myself to low tier. I give the design of Konosuba 9.5 out of 10. Honestly, there isn't really much that I dislike about this show, as I feel like anything that would usually be perceived as bad is used for comedy, like how Union is kind of annoying, or the Crimson Demon monologue thing as well. But that being said, there are some things that I personally do find a little sussy. Remember how I mentioned that I really like the interactions between the characters in Kazuma's party? I meant to say the interactions between Kazuma and his party. There really isn't much interaction between Darkness, Aqua, and Megumin, and when it does happen, it's just something typical like you would expect from almost anyone and from any anime, whatever. I just wish that the focus was a little more on the party as a whole, and a little less on Kazuma, although he is the main character, so I'll cut him some slack. I really don't care about it too much. It just bugs me a little. Besides that, Darkness's kink can be a little annoying sometimes, and that's about it. Like I said, not really much to complain about here. This show's pretty adequate, man. I give Konosuba a flaw noticeability ranking of 1 out of 10. Barely noticeable. So, Konosuba's a great show, man. It's got some great characters in a very realistic, non-realistic world. I recommend this show to anyone who wants a good laugh and doesn't feel like watching Gintama for its comedy yet. I'll make you do it one day, don't worry. This is also great for beginners to the anime scene, as you won't be bombarded with questions like, is it really okay for me to do a thing like this? Or, was it really worth it in the end? This show is just, hey you two, play strip rock paper scissors while I lay on this lady's thighs. No deep thought required. Also, I would really like to mention that the dub for the show is actually pretty darn good, and the movie is also pretty baller. Features some canon fan fiction that I'm a fan of. Anyway, back to grading. So, after doing lots of pre-calculus math formulas and such, I can give this show a definitive score of a PSA 8. Yeah. Have you ever felt strong feelings for someone else? Have you ever felt self-conscious about these feelings out of fear of being humiliated? Well, if you have, so have I, to a large degree. But in other news, there is a show that just may pique your interest. Of course, I'm talking about Kaguya-sama Love is War, otherwise known as Kaguya-sama. This show is all about that overthinking part of you that always seems to show up when you don't want. Okay, you know what? I'm revealing too much, so this show's freaking awesome. Let's just get started into the grading. Let's just get right into the grading already. Kaguya-sama takes place in what I can only assume to be a rich and/or smart boy school in Japan, called Shuchen Academy. In this school, there happen to be two students who are at the top of pretty much everything in the school, including the government of the school. The basic gist of the story is that they both secretly, but not really secretly, love each other, since everyone in the school essentially either figures they're dating or knows that they have feelings for each other, except for a certain Fujiwara, but we'll get to her later. They both harbor these feelings from each other due to the fear that they will come off as too submissive, and therefore be bound to the other's commands forever. Yeah, it's basically a battle for who will be the top if they ever get to step C. If you thought their reasoning is very strange and extremely demeaning to the other person, then you'd be right! Now, of course, this issue of submission is also due to differences in status, with Kaguya being a part of Japan's, richest family or something, and Shirogane living in a 50,000 yen apartment with a sister and dad who does not have a stable job, but still kind of weird. But what this does for the story and humor is fantastic. Some episodes made me feel like I was watching Death Note, but instead of a mental battle for someone to state their true identity, it's a battle for love. Different scenarios that most episodes present are simple situations that would usually be done normally by any old group of people. But it's the intense mental battle / overthinking that takes place between these characters, except Fujiwara, that gives these situations some great and clever humor. Some of my personal favorite examples are Fujiwara's various board games and when Ino thinks that Kaguya and Shirogane are up to some S&M skit. There are also parts of the show that do hit you in the feels, with the best examples being the last few episodes of episode 1, Ishigami's backstory, and the first part of the last episode of season 2. Honestly man, the story is pretty freaking awesome. I'm gonna have to give the centering a 9.5 out of 10. Man, I would be terrible if I worked at PSA. I focus way too much on the centering of this card. We all know that PSA doesn't really care about centering. Anyway, let's get into the real tofu and potatoes. The characters. Yeah, they're really good. Actually, pretty amazing actually. In fact, they're so good that the show is named after one of them. That being Kaguya, for those of you who are illiterate. These characters are extremely memorable and likely dislikable in their own ways. Shirogane would probably be your typical shonen protag if it wasn't for an inclination to study, work, not sleep, and actively be too scared to ask Kaguya out. Now that I think about it, he really isn't a typical shonen protag. No wonder why this is a sign-in. The aforementioned Kaguya is the rich girl who is also extremely smart but has been sheltered by her rich family's ways. So one could say she's a little out of touch. She thought kissing was as far as one can go in a relationship. Dang bro. That's messed up. Fujiwara is your typical self-centered, bubbly high school girl who is kinda dumb, but in a good way. I really like the way she acts as the chaos factor in Kaguya and Shirogane's various battles. She comes out of nowhere and doesn't understand a lick of anything that's going on. Also, she's the only one in the school that hasn't figured out that Shirogane and Kaguya like each other, so yeah. Ishigami's your typical depressed and social outcast kid. In anime, let me make that very clear. In anime. He only started to show up halfway through season 1 because he would just hide in the student council room, do his duties, then go home. But once he gets introduced, he begins to connect with the members of the student council and eventually starts to grow comfortable around them. The backstory of his we see much later on is one that is truly heartbreaking to watch. It manages to show what kind of person Ishigami truly is and why he is the way he is in the present. I really enjoyed seeing all these characters interact with each other and seeing their respective character quirks collide and cooperate with each other. Some of my favorite instances are Fujiwara's various training sessions with Shirogane, Kaguya getting mad at Fujiwara, and Ishigami thinking that Kaguya is out to kill him. Now, of course, there are other characters like Communist Nancy, Second Best Girl, and Shirogane's baller dad, but they're all reoccurring, and I mostly just want to talk about the main cast. All in all, these characters are freaking awesome. So I'm gonna have to give the design for this card a 10 out of 10. By the way, I touched on this before, but in case y'all were wondering, here's the best girl ranking. You're welcome. Honestly, I was not excited to get to this part, because I have a lot to talk about here. Oh, wait. That's the wrong part of the script. That's for the next show. As for this show is wear and tear. None. Literally none. Pristine, mint condition. I'm giving it a 0 out of 10 here. I just can't think of anything wrong with this show. It's too good. Kaguya-sama is a true masterclass in comedy and even in romance storytelling. Now, this is the only romantic comedy style anime that I've ever watched and the only one I'm really interested in. So I think for a while this would be my favorite romantic comedy anime. Everything about the show feels so bizarre yet strangely familiar, because I swear, trying to figure out what a woman's thinking is like trying to find the One Piece. It's a long journey, and you're gonna need a strong ship and crew, because there'll be nothing but stormy seas. This is coming from someone with no love experience, just failed attempts, so one could say I'm a veteran pirate. Anyway, Kaguya-sama is awesome. It's also got a dub, and I gotta say, it's probably the best dub I've ever heard. Seriously, dude. It's super good. I actually think the narrator in the dub is better than the sub one. I don't know if that's a hot take, but it's my take. So, after all is said and done, I give Kaguya-sama Love is War a 9.5 out of 10. It's good, bro. Okay, I have a lot to say about this one, and I'm expecting you guys were waiting for this part of the video, so I'm gonna just get right into it. Just expect some sections of the grading to be longer than others. Also, as a side note, I feel like I might have a thing for black hair and red eyes in anime, especially if they're a samurai. Like, shweesh. I think I just need a tomboy GF. If anyone can help, I'm accepting applications. So, Akame takes place in your typical fantasy-style kingdom with knights, magic, and the like. And just like any typical story, there's a wee bit of corruption in the kingdom. So much so, in fact, that anyone in the higher classes is essentially allowed to kill anyone they want. So naturally, there's a rebel army who wants to overthrow the current emperor and a band of assassins to go with it. This band of assassins, called Night Raid, is our main focus throughout the story, right when Tatsumi first meets them. I'll touch on them in a bit, just know that they're cool. I think the story is all in all pretty good. I actually like how they set up the government as a super terrible thing by having all the people in the towns warn Tatsumi of the danger he could find himself if he tried to join the high ranks of the army. Also just by showing what exactly the high class is capable of under this false emperor. There are also a ton of right versus wrong messages that I'm really a fan of, but I'll talk more on that a bit later. The power system is also really dope. It's kind of like stands from JoJo's, except they can be passed down from person to person and have a built-in Deus Ex Machina mechanic. More on that later. I think that this story is pretty decent on its own, but of course I do have some gripes about it, which I, once again, will talk about later. I give the centering a 7 out of 10. So characters. Sorry. I really don't have much to say about them. It's a pretty standard shonen cast you've probably seen before in other properties. You got the highly optimistic protag Tatsumi, the cold samurai with cute tendencies. I'm into this, by the way. Gives me Nobume vibes. The pervert, the older sister, the pervert slash older brother, gay tough guy edition. Glasses, the berater, the cool boss. Now, I'm not saying that any of this standard stuff is bad in any way. I think it's completely fine. In fact, I really like the ways that the different characters interact with each other, as it kind of makes them feel like an actual team that has known each other for while. And certain events in the story make the characters show us new faces of them that we've never seen before. Some of my favorite characters in this main group would have to be Akame, Bulat, and Leon. But as with most things, there are some things that feel a bit forced between some characters. Also, a lot of comedy can come in at moments where they really shouldn't be. Also, I don't know why the show isn't called Tatsumi Ga Kill, because he gets way more spotlight than Akame does, which is a little weird and kind of makes me sad in ways that I'll discuss very shortly. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so I'll give the design of this card a 7 out of 10. Okay, this will be the only spoiler section in this video, because a lot of both the good and bad things about the show involve massive story revelations and such, so yeah. Yeah, the show's super short, so watch it for yourself if you haven't. If you have not watched Akame ga Kill, skip to this time or you will be spoiled almost immediately. Okay, now that everyone's gone, everyone freaking dies. Usually this would be a bait like in my Gintama video, but no, I'm not joking. Every single member of Night Raid, except the boss and Akame, die. But just to preface this, I was spoiled of this, but I didn't really believe it to be true, so I watched it. And yep, they were right. Now, believe it or not, I actually kind of like this as a storytelling device, because it shows that war is a very real thing, and that even people that are fighting for a good cause are just as vulnerable to death as the enemy is. This makes the story feel a little more real in my opinion, so I really don't mind it too much. But Jesus, man, the show is so freaking short that you really don't have time to feel truly sad for the deaths that happened. The first death happens on like the 4th episode or something, and we barely knew anything about her. It was mainly just used as a way to set up the Jaegers a few episodes in advance. I actually kind of like the Jaegers, because it shows that even though they're enemies, they're still people with lives, and are not too different from Night Raid. There's a whole slew of problems that I have that I will just list off here. I know the story calls for it, but I really hate the trump card mechanic, especially in the way that Tatsumi and Akame use it. You're essentially telling me that Tatsumi mastered Encursio in that very short amount of time after Bulat's death, which by the way, Bulat did not actually master Encursio himself, so this makes even less sense. And then Akame's is just dumb. She literally said that her life was in danger every time she has to clean her sword due to its poison, but now all of a sudden it powers her up and has no side effects? Besides like some like tribal marks? I would have been fine with this if they had mentioned this beforehand or said that there was a grave downside to it, but no, she's fine afterwards. Another issue that I have is Tatsumi is essentially the main character, which really makes me upset because I really wanted to learn more about this cool looking samurai assassin. But nope, just typical shonen protag. On that same note, Akame's backstory with her sister is kinda stupid. Like, yeah, y'all are on different sides, but you don't have to kill each other over it. Like, that's so dumb. I really don't like it because it essentially shows that these characters are not ones that will change their ideals for the sake of the people they love. They essentially just have a one-track mind. Some other things I dislike was the legitimate romance between Mine and Tatsumi, because I feel that him and Akame should have had a thing going on, but I guess that might be a personal thing. Esdeath as a character is fine, I just don't like her lust for Tatsumi. Although I do kind of like how it almost makes her rethink her motives. Keyword almost. Why is Leon capable of taking on several Royal Arms users, but is incapable of taking down a morbidly obese grandpa with a gun? Just what? And the ending itself just feels unsatisfying. Cause yeah, we know that Night Raid's big plan did succeed, but we're only left with minimal characters to celebrate the success with. And also, going back to Akame's Deus Ex Machina, it is extremely hard for me to believe that somehow it beat freezing time. We also know little to nothing about what happens to the kingdom after they have all won, so we don't even know who the new ruler is. I'm essentially just rambling at this point, but I think I'm done, man. I'm worn out. I give the wear and tear of this card a 6 out of 10. Extremely noticeable, and does cause visual interference. So, we're finally done with this roller coaster of emotions. Jesus, this video is going to be long. But I don't know how I rambled on for so long, but I guess I just did. Anyway, these anime are pretty good for the most part, except if its name's Akame got killed, and managed to provide some good viewing pleasure times. This actually does apply to Akame. I actually enjoyed watching it. I recommend you watch all of these so you can get your own opinion on these shows. And I'm curious to hear what y'all think. Unless you disagree with me, then prepare to GTAB. Mods, you know what to do. Anyway, I hope y'all thoroughly enjoyed this video. That different quirky video that I was talking about in the Gintama vid is probably coming soon, but I don't know for sure because I'm not on HRT and therefore cannot time travel to my future self. Okay, goodbye and thank you for watching.
Fortnite balls all in your face. Fortnite balls all in your face.